The war had raged for over a decade. Humanity had thrown everything it had against the auxiliary swarm, tanks, warships, orbital bombardments, but nothing stopped them. The insectoid aliens moved like an endless tide, devouring worlds, reducing cities to rubble, and leaving behind nothing but silence. Commander Eric Voss stood on the bridge of the horizon's edge, staring at the holomap of their latest defeat. Another colony lost. Millions dead. The swarm had pushed humanity to the edge of extinction. "We can't keep fighting like this," muttered Lieutenant Grace Carter beside him. "They outnumber us 1,000 to 1. "We don't need to win," Voss said, his voice grim. "We just need to make them lose." That was why the scientists had created Project Genesis, a desperate weapon designed to disrupt the auxiliary's ability to reproduce. If the swarm could no longer birth new soldiers, humanity had a chance. But there was a problem. The bioweapon had never been tested. No one knew exactly what it would do. The plan was simple: infiltrate the auxiliary warship Void Mother, the living fortress of their queen, and release the bioweapon at its core. The queen controlled the swarm's hive mind. If they crippled her, the war might finally end. The mission team launched in the dead of space, their stealth ship slipping past the auxiliary patrols. The Void Mother was enormous, its surface pulsing with eerie blue light. Voss led the team inside, moving through dark, fleshy tunnels that smelled of rot and chemicals. Then the swarm found them. The tunnels exploded with movement as auxiliary warriors attacked. Chitinous creatures with razor-sharp limbs and glowing red eyes. Gunfire lit up the darkness. The humans fought fiercely, but they were outmatched. One by one, they fell. Voss reached the control chamber, wounded and alone. The queen loomed above him. Vorakai, the mother of the swarm. She was monstrous, standing over 10 feet tall, her exoskeleton dark as night, her eyes glowing with cold intelligence. She hissed, stepping toward him, her presence radiating pure hatred. Voss had only one chance. He activated the bioweapon, releasing a pulse of energy that spread through the chamber. Vorakai shrieked, her body convulsing, her connection to the swarm flickering like a broken signal. And then, silence. Voss collapsed, expecting death. But instead of attacking, the queen staggered. Something was happening to her. Her body was changing. Her eyes, once filled with nothing but hunger, now showed something strange. Fear, confusion, emotion. The last thing Voss saw before darkness took him was the impossible. The queen clutching her own chest, whispering a word no auxiliary had ever spoken before. What is this? The war was supposed to end with her death. Instead, it had just begun. Again. Vorakai had never felt fear before. For her entire existence, she had been the queen of the swarm, a perfect being without doubt, without weakness. Her mind had stretched across countless worlds, commanding her children with absolute control. She was the voice in their heads, the will that guided them. But now, the voices were gone. She stumbled, her clawed hands trembling. Her exoskeleton felt wrong. Too soft in some places, too rigid in others. Something inside her was changing, twisting in ways she didn't understand. And then there was the human, the one who had done this to her. She looked down at the wounded figure lying on the cold floor. The human male, Eric Voss. Blood dripped from a wound on his forehead. His breathing was weak, but he was alive. A week ago, she would have torn him apart without a thought. Now, the very idea of harming him sent a strange, painful sensation through her chest. Guilt? No, Silari did not feel guilt. But then, what was this? Her sharp claws retracted slightly. A strange instinct told her to protect. Vorakai shook her head violently. No, this is wrong. This is human weakness. She staggered away, but her body resisted. Her thoughts, once clear and cold, were now flooded with something chaotic. Memories, not hers, flashed in her mind. Laughter, warmth, A child's voice calling out, "Mother." Her claws dug into the floor. She was the mother of the swarm, but the Xilari did not call her that with love. They were weapons, soldiers. She was their creator, their ruler, nothing more. But the word mother in her mind, it did not feel like power. It felt like something else. Vorake turned back to the human. He was dying. His kind had killed millions of her children, and yet she knelt beside him. Her long fingers hovered over his wound. She had never healed before. The swarm took what was weak and left it behind. But something deep inside her whispered, "Try." She pressed her hand against his wound. A strange warmth spread from her fingertips. The cells in her body shifted, adapting, learning. She did not understand why she was doing this, only that she had to. Voss gasped, his body jerking as his wound began to close. His eyes fluttered open. He saw her. For a moment, neither moved. His lips parted, and he whispered one word, full of shock and confusion. Why? Vorake did not know the answer. The ship trembled. Something was wrong. She felt it before she saw it. A presence, a voice, not her own, but familiar. The swarm. They were coming for her. And for the first time in her existence, she did not feel them as her children. She felt them as a threat. Vorake stood frozen as a wave of cold realization washed over her. The swarm was coming. She could feel them, but not as she once had. Before, their thoughts had been hers, their instincts an extension of her will. Now, they were distant, not children seeking guidance, but hunters tracking prey. And she was the prey. Vorake clenched her claws. This is wrong. This is not how it should be. The swarm obeyed the queen. That was the law. But now, they no longer saw her as their queen. They saw her as a mistake. Eric Voss stirred beside her, groaning as he sat up. His eyes, still unfocused, locked onto her. What happened? He rasped. Vorake hesitated. The truth felt too impossible to say. She had been changed, not just in body, but in mind. The bioweapon he had unleashed did something no Xilari could comprehend. It had given her emotions. She did not answer him. There was no time. The swarm was closing in, and the ship was breaking apart. The walls trembled as explosions echoed through the corridors. Vorake turned sharply. We must leave. Voss gave a bitter laugh, wincing from the pain in his ribs. Yeah. And how do you suggest we do that? We're trapped on an alien warship in the middle of space. She ignored his sarcasm and reached out. For a brief moment, she tried to reconnect with the swarm, to command them, as she had done 1,000 times before. But where there had once been absolute obedience, now there was only silence. No, not silence. Hatred. A single voice rose among them, clear and sharp as a blade. Traitor. Vorake's mandibles tightened. She recognized that voice. General Khazur. He had been one of her most loyal warlords, ruthless and unyielding. But now he was the one leading the swarm against her. She turned back to Voss. We must reach the human escape pods. Voss blinked. You have those. I have taken many human ships, she said simply. Voss muttered something under his breath but pushed himself to his feet. All right, Queen Bug. Lead the way. The corridors were collapsing around them. The swarm was already inside, scuttling through the tunnels, their clicking limbs echoing like a death march. They ran. Vorake moved faster than Voss, her body built for war. But she slowed herself, something inside her unwilling to leave him behind. For the first time, she wondered why. The escape pods were just ahead. Vorake could see the control panel, but as she reached for it, a deafening screech filled the air. A massive figure dropped from the ceiling, its armored form blocking the way. General Khazur. His red eyes burned with fury. You are no queen, he spat. You are an abomination. Vorake straightened, something deep inside her shifting. No, she said softly. I am something new. And then the fight began. She lunged at General Khazur, her claws slashing through the air. He dodged with inhuman speed, his chitinous armor gleaming under the flickering red emergency lights. You are weak, Khazur hissed, striking back with a brutal swipe. Vorakai barely dodged in time, his claws slicing through the air where her head had been. Voss watched, gripping his blaster with shaking hands. He knew he was outmatched. The two alien warriors moved like blurs, their attacks too fast for him to follow. If Vorakai lost, he was dead. But something was different about her. Khazur fought with cold, precise efficiency, the way Xilari had always fought. But Vorakai, she moved with something new. Her attacks were unpredictable, her movements instinctive, like she was learning as she fought, like she was evolving. Khazur snarled. You are infected with human weakness. Vorakai blocked his next strike, her claws locking against his. Their faces were inches apart. She felt his hatred like a burning fire. I am more than you, she said. With a sudden twist, she threw him back, sending him crashing into the wall. Before he could recover, she turned and slammed her fist into the control panel. The escape pod doors slid open. Go, she ordered Voss. What about you? He demanded. Vorakai hesitated. She could kill Khazur now, end him before he could hunt her down. But something stopped her. Killing him felt wrong. For the first time, she understood what mercy was. Khazur stared at her, his red eyes burning with rage. You will regret this, traitor. Vorakai didn't answer. She stepped into the pod with Voss, and the doors sealed shut. With a violent jolt, they were launched into space. The Xilari warship shrank behind them, engulfed in explosions. Vorakai watched in silence. Her past, her people, all of it was gone. She was no longer the queen of the swarm. She was something else. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. The human fleet found them drifting near the debris field. The rescue team stormed in, their weapons aimed at Vorakai the moment they saw her. Stand down, Voss shouted, stepping between them. The soldiers hesitated. The sight of a Xilari queen on their ship was beyond belief. Admiral Jensen, an older man with a scared face, stepped forward. His cold gaze settled on Vorakai. Explain. Voss exhaled. She's not our enemy. Not anymore. The admiral studied her. Then what is she? Vorakai met his gaze. She did not know the answer. She only knew one thing. She had been a queen. She had been a conqueror. Now she was something else. Something new. And for the first time in her existence, she did not know what the future would bring. Vorakai sat in silence, surrounded by armed human soldiers. Their weapons never lowered, their fingers tense on the triggers. She could smell their fear. She understood it. She was their nightmare come to life. A Xilari queen, the very thing that had slaughtered millions of their kind. And yet here she was, sitting on a human warship, unchained but caged by their suspicion. Across from her, Admiral Jensen watched with cold, calculating eyes. You expect me to believe that you've changed. Vorakai's mandibles twitched. What I was no longer exists. Jensen leaned back, unconvinced. And yet, we're still at war with your kind. Before she could respond, alarms blared through the ship. The crew scrambled, voices shouting over one another. Multiple warp signatures detected. Vorakai felt it before the scanners confirmed it. The swarm had come. A massive Xilari fleet emerged from hyperspace, their dark, organic warships blotting out the stars. Thousands of them, more than any human fleet could fight. Jensen turned to his officers. Battle stations. Deploy all fighters. No, Vorakai interrupted. The humans froze. Soldiers gripped their weapons tighter, ready to fire if she made the wrong move. Vorakai slowly stood. You cannot fight them. Not like this. Jensen narrowed his eyes. Then what do you suggest? Surrender. Vorakai stepped forward, and the soldiers flinched. She ignored them. Her focus was on the ships outside. "They are not here to negotiate," she said. "They are here to exterminate me. And if you stand in their way, they will exterminate you too." Jensen clenched his jaw. "Then what do we do?" Vorakai took a slow breath. She had spent her entire existence giving orders, controlling millions. Now she had no army, no swarm to obey her commands. But she had something else. "I will speak to them," she said. Jensen stared at her like she was insane. "They just tried to kill you." "They fear what I have become," she said. "But fear can be turned into doubt." Jensen exhaled sharply. "Fine. But if this is a trick—" "It is not," she said, "because if I fail, we all die." Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. Moments later, Vorakai stood on the bridge, facing the massive view screen. The lead Silari warship hovered before them, an eerie organic fortress pulsing with dark energy. A hologram flickered to life. General Khazur. His crimson eyes burned with fury. "You should not exist," he snarled. Vorakai met his gaze. "Yet here I am." Khazur hissed. "You are a disease. The swarm will not allow this corruption to spread." "Then why are you afraid?" she asked. For a brief second, Khazur hesitated, and in that moment, Vorakai saw it. Doubt. The swarm did not doubt. They obeyed. They followed. But now, for the first time, they questioned. And that was more dangerous than any weapon. For a long moment, neither Vorakai nor General Khazur spoke. The tension on the bridge was thick, every human soldier on edge, their weapons aimed at the hologram of the Silari warlord. Vorakai could feel it. Hesitation. Not just from Khazur, but from the swarm itself. The hive mind still pulsed with its ancient hunger, but now something new had crept in. A whisper. A doubt. The swarm had never questioned before, but now she had forced them to. Khazur's mandibles twitched, his red eyes burning with fury. "You are a mistake." Vorakai tilted her head. "Then why have you not killed me yet?" The general stiffened. The truth was simple. He did not know what she was anymore. She had been their queen, their absolute leader. Now she was something else. Something unpredictable. Something the swarm did not understand. Vorakai took a step closer to the view screen. "You call me a mistake, but I am the future. I have changed. I have evolved. And you fear that." Khazur let out a low, dangerous growl. "We fear nothing." "Then prove it," she said. "Look into the minds of the swarm. Feel what they feel." Khazur hesitated again, and Vorakai knew she had struck a nerve. She had once been connected to every Xilari warrior, felt their thoughts as her own. She knew the truth. Some of them were beginning to wonder. The swarm was not supposed to wonder. Khazur slammed a fist into his chest. "The swarm serves only strength, and you are weak." Vorakai let out a slow breath. The old ways of the Xilari would not be broken so easily. She had planted the seed of doubt, but Khazur would not surrender. Not yet. He raised a claw, issuing a single command. "Destroy them." The transmission cut off. The Xilari fleet moved. The human bridge erupted into chaos. Alarms blared. Jensen shouted orders. "All ships, prepare for battle." Vorakai remained still. She had failed to stop the attack. The humans were doomed in open combat. They needed another way. Voss turned to her, his face grim. "Any ideas, or are we just gonna die here?" Vorakai closed her eyes. The swarm no longer obeyed her, but she still understood them. They were a force of nature, relentless and overwhelming. Fighting them head-on was suicide. But there was one thing she knew about the Xilari. They never expected deception. She opened her eyes. "Take me to the communications array." Jensen frowned. "Why?" "I will give them a choice," she said. "And even if you listen, we may survive." Voss sighed. "Let me guess. If this doesn't work, we're dead." Vorakai's mandibles twitched in something almost like a smile. Yes. And with that, she walked toward humanity's last hope. Vorakai stood in front of the human communication console, her claws hovering over the controls. Around her, alarms blared as the auxiliary fleet closed in. The human warship trembled under distant impacts, the shields barely holding. There was no time left. She turned to Admiral Jensen. Open a wide-frequency broadcast. I need to reach all of them. Jensen hesitated. And if this doesn't work? Voss answered before Vorakai could. Then we all get turned into space dust. Jensen exhaled sharply, then nodded to his crew. Do it. A green light flickered on. The signal was live. Vorakai took a deep breath and spoke, not as a queen commanding her swarm, but as something new. To all auxiliary warriors, hear me. Her voice echoed across the fleet, reaching the minds of thousands. She could feel them listening, though they tried to resist. I was once your queen. You followed me without question. But now you hunt me. Ask yourselves, why? The response was immediate. A wave of anger surged through the hive mind. Khazur's voice cut through the link. You are a traitor. Vorakai did not flinch. A traitor to what? To a system that never allowed us to grow. To a life where we are nothing but weapons, mindless and unchanging. The swarm stirred. The younger minds, those who had known nothing but war, hesitated. Vorakai continued. I have seen another way. I have felt what it means to protect, not just destroy. To choose, not just obey. More hesitation. Small, but there. The swarm had never been given a choice before. Khazur's rage burned through the connection. You have been poisoned by humanity. The swarm does not choose. The swarm conquers. Vorakai clenched her fists. Then why do some of you hesitate? A ripple spread through the hive mind. Doubt. A dangerous thing. Khazur felt it too. He roared in fury, issuing a single command. Destroy her ship. Now. Outside, the auxiliary warships turned their weapons toward the human vessel. The humans braced for impact. And then, nothing happened. Some ships had powered down their weapons. Others had hesitated mid-command. The swarm was fracturing. Khazur's fury was deafening. You will obey. But the damage had been done. A single voice rose within the hive mind. Uncertain, but strong. What if she is right? Then another. And another. Vorakai felt something shift. The swarm was no longer one voice. It was many. And that changed everything. On the human bridge, Voss let out a breath. Did we just win? Vorakai shook her head. No, we just started a war. A war not between auxiliary and humans, but between the swarm itself. The silence in space was deafening. The swarm, once a single unstoppable force, was now divided. Some auxiliary ships still had their weapons aimed at the human fleet. Others floated motionless, their pilots lost in hesitation. Vorakai could feel their confusion through the weakened hive mind. They had never been given a choice before. Khazur's rage burned through the link. You are not auxiliary. You are a disease that must be purged. Vorakai clenched her claws. I was like you once. I believed strength was everything. That obedience was the only path. But I have seen what lies beyond it. Khazur bared his fangs. You have seen weakness. She stepped closer to the console. No, I have seen freedom. A shockwave of emotion rippled through the swarm. Freedom. The word itself was alien to them, something they had never known, never needed. But now they wondered. A single auxiliary warship broke formation. Then another. A hesitation spread like wildfire. Khazur howled in fury. You dare betray the swarm. The rebel auxiliary did not answer with words. They answered with action. A blast of plasma fire erupted from one of the defecting ships, striking one of Khazur's loyalists. The warlord screeched in shock as the once unbreakable unity of the swarm collapsed into civil war. The battle erupted in an instant. Siluri ships fired upon each other, their perfect formations turning into chaos. The human fleet, still caught between them, scrambled to escape the crossfire. On the bridge, Jensen gripped the edge of his command console. What the hell is happening? Vorakai exhaled. They are fighting for the right to choose. Voss shook his head in disbelief. You just broke the swarm. She turned to face him. No, I set them free. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. The battle outside raged on. Siluri warships, once perfect in their deadly efficiency, now fought like individuals. Some still followed Kozur, desperate to maintain the old ways. Others followed something new, the idea that they could be more. On the human bridge, Jensen saw their opportunity. If we're getting out of this alive, we move now. Voss turned to Vorakai. You coming with us, or do you still think you're one of them? Vorakai hesitated. For the first time in her life, she was not following orders. She was not controlling a swarm. She was choosing. She looked at the chaos outside. Kozur's forces were still strong, still ruthless. If he won this war, the Siluri would return to their old ways. Worse, they would never allow humanity to exist. She turned to Jensen. I will fight. Voss smirked. Well, that's good, because we're gonna need all the help we can get. As the battle raged on, Vorakai made her choice. She was no longer a queen. She was a warrior, and she would fight for the future. The battle tore through space like a raging storm. Siluri warships turned against each other, their once perfect unity shattered. Some still obeyed General Kozur, clinging to the old ways of the swarm. But others, those who had tasted doubt, those who had felt the spark of freedom, fought back. The human fleet was caught in the middle, dodging plasma fire as they tried to escape. On the bridge, Admiral Jensen watched the chaos. We won't last much longer in this crossfire. Voss turned to Vorakai. You said you'd fight. Got any bright ideas? Vorakai's mandibles twitched. She could feel the battle through the fractured hive mind. The Siluri had always fought as one, but now the rebels lacked coordination. Kozur still commanded absolute discipline among his forces. If he wasn't stopped, he would crush the rebellion. She knew what had to be done. I must face Kozur, she said. Jensen raised an eyebrow. That's suicide. Voss frowned. Unless you think you can turn the tide. Vorakai nodded. The swarm still feels his dominance. If I defeat him, his followers will break. Jensen hesitated, then let out a sharp breath. Then we'll get you there. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. Vorakai moved swiftly through the human ship's docking bay, stepping into a stolen Siluri attack craft. Voss slid into the co-pilot seat. You're not going alone. She glanced at him. You would fight beside me. He smirked. You're part of our mess now, Bug Queen. Let's finish this. The ship roared to life, launching into the chaos of battle. Kozur's warship loomed ahead, its jagged, organic design pulsing with energy. It was the heart of his command, and the key to ending the war. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. The docking bay doors of Kozur's warship burst open as Vorakai and Voss stormed inside. Siluri warriors attacked instantly, their claws flashing, but Vorakai was faster. She moved like a shadow, striking with brutal precision. She was no longer a queen. She was a warrior. Voss covered her, blasting enemies aside as they pushed toward the command chamber. The doors slid open. Kozur stood in the center, his crimson eyes glowing with rage. You dare return here, he snarled. Vorakai stepped forward. Your reign ends today. Kozur let out a guttural laugh. You think breaking the swarm's unity makes you strong. You are nothing without them. Vorakai's claws flexed. I am stronger because I am more than the swarm. Kozur lunged. The battle was fierce, claws slashing, blows landing with bone-crushing force. Khizr fought with raw power, but Vorake fought with something new. Adaptation. She had learned from the humans, from her own transformation. And she was winning. Khizr stumbled, injured, his rage turning to disbelief. This is impossible. Vorake raised her claws. No, this is evolution. She struck, and the tyrant fell. Khizr collapsed, his massive form twitching as dark blood pooled beneath him. His crimson eyes flickered, filled with disbelief. The swarm obeys only strength, he gasped. Vorake stood over him, her claws still stained with the battle. Then they will follow me. Khizr let out a final, shuddering breath. His body stiffened, and then the once mighty general of the Xilari was dead. For a moment there was silence. Then a ripple of shock spread through the swarm. Vorake felt it. Confusion, fear, hesitation. Khizr's forces, once so certain in their loyalty, were suddenly leaderless, and leaderless Xilari did not know what to do. Voss stepped beside her, panting. Please tell me that did something. Vorake closed her eyes and reached out with her mind. The swarm had been shattered. The old way, obedience without question, was gone. Some Xilari still wanted war, still clung to the past. But others had seen the truth. They could choose. Vorake opened her eyes. It is over. Voss let out a breath of relief. So, what now? Asterisk. Back in space, the battle came to a sudden halt. Xilari warships that had once been Khizr's strongest warriors now drifted in uncertainty. The rebels, seeing their chance, reached out, and one by one, the ships stood down. The human fleet, battered but alive, received the transmissions. Admiral Jensen watched in awe as thousands of Xilari ships powered down their weapons. The war, it just stopped, one of his officers whispered. Jensen shook his head. No, it changed. Asterisk. Vorake and Voss returned to the human flagship, stepping onto the bridge where Jensen and his crew watched the battlefield. It's done, Vorake said simply. Jensen studied her, then nodded. You just changed the course of history. She tilted her head. No, we did. The Xilari, once the greatest threat to humanity, were no longer a single force. Some still remained dangerous. But others, those who had chosen freedom, would never return to their old ways. And with Khizr gone, there was no one left to force them. Voss smirked. So, what does that make you now? Still a queen? Vorake was silent for a moment. No, she finally said. I am something new. She turned to the view screen, watching as human and Xilari ships coexisted in an uneasy but hopeful peace. A new beginning, a new future. And for the first time in her life, Vorake was free.